There we go. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will convene the meeting of the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations and call your attention to the agenda on the first page of your notebook and take you to the minutes of the January 2025 meeting for approval today. Unless there is objection, the minutes will stand as approved. Is there any objection to approving the minutes for the January meeting? There being none, the minutes stand as approved. I'll ask Director Lippard now to make his report and would refer you to tab 2, where he will draw from that information for his report. Director Lippard, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. We have a number of commission and staff updates under tab 2. First off, would like to welcome our newest member, Senator Richard Briggs, who's been appointed to the commission by the Lieutenant Governor. Senator. Also, Chairman Hicks, as chair of the House Finance, Ways and Means Committee, was appointed. We noted this at the last meeting, but this is his first meeting where he's actually been able to attend, and so also welcome Chairman Hicks. Next, Chairman, it is time for our biennial election of officers. Every other year, we elect chair and vice chair. And at this point, Chairman, for that election, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for the purpose of the election of chairman of TACIR, I'm going to ask our very able vice chairman to conduct that election.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to open for nominations. Yes, Mayor Waters.
Yes, I'd like to renominate and our chairman, Senator Yeager, who is a longtime friend. I'll not tell you, I think he may be older than me. I don't know.
Is there objection to
But
that?
he and I have been friends, I guess, since about 1978 when I first took office as county mayor, and he has done an excellent job. And it's my honor to nominate him as chair.
That is a proper nomination and has been properly seconded. There's been a motion to cease nominations, and that is a proper motion as well. Can we accept by acclamation?
Second on the motion to cease nominations.
All right, there's a motion and a second. We will receive by acclamation for the remaining chairman, Senator Ken Yeager. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, members, for your confidence. It's a real honor for me to serve as chairman of TACIR because of the importance of this body. It's just, I'm very flattered that you would let me serve as your chairman. So thank you very much. And I also want to say what a joy it is to work with such a competent director and outstanding staff as well. So thank you very much. And next on our agenda is the election of vice chairman. I'll open the nomination for, I'll open the floor for nominations. Mayor Anderson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like to nominate great mayor of Cleveland, Tennessee, the home of the M&Ms, to continue on with his service as a backup to you're not able to be
Yes.
here for whatever reason.
That's a good
So I
job.
put that in form of a motion.
There is a motion with a second. Second, yes, all right. Are there any other nominations for the office of vice chairman? There being none, Chair will entertain a motion to close, and then Chair will entertain a motion and to elect Vice Chairman Brooks by acclamation. All right. Those in favor of electing by acclamation, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carries. Congratulations, Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to serve in this wonderful chamber and with my colleagues, and as you as chairman, and as you said, with our director and staff of what I think is the greatest think tank on Capitol Hill, the TACIR Commission.
That's right.
So,
Exactly.
thank you.
Although I do have one serious comment to make. We may have to have an ethics review on this because is there an attempted bribery here. He was giving out M&Ms before the meeting.
When you're the mayor of M&M Town, that's what you do.
Actually, tell them Cleveland is the home where they make
I'm
M&Ms.
very proud to represent as mayor, Cleveland, Tennessee, and the home of M&M Mars, where 300 million M&Ms are made each day, including today. So enjoy your M&Ms, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so I'll withdraw my comments. I think it was just some good tourism promotion rather than any attempt to sway a vote. Okay, Dr. Lippert.
Thank you, Chairman. I did not receive any M&Ms, but
Well, you didn't have a vote.
so returning to tab 2. This past year. Oh, I'm sorry, Chairman. You had asked if we could take pictures
You wanna do
after the
that?
elections off, so we could, so we don't keep the photographer here all
Is
day.
there any objection to their taking a picture? I mean, they've had to twist our arms to have us in this picture, but anyway, yeah, can we do that
Sure.
up here? All right, where do you want to do this? Right here?
Right, this one.
All right. We'll go into recess to allow them to take the picture, because if we wait till at the end of the meeting, this gentleman will have to sit here and wait when he has some other things he needs to do. Okay, here we go. Get up here with us. You want me to, would you like me to hold this?
No.
Like this? Thank you. Thank you. We will come back into session now from that brief recess, and I'll ask Dr. Lippert to continue his report. Thank you.
The next commission update, Mr. Chairman, is just noting that with the passage of Public Chapter 524 Acts of 2025, the Less is More Act, the terms of our non-legislative members have been standardized. This is to simplify both for our own nominating and appointing purposes, but also for the appointing authorities. This was I know all of our legislative members are familiar with the Less is More Act, but for our other members, this was an act that standardized a number of appointments and terms across several state agencies and commissions, not just TACIR. But for our purposes, it did standardize the terms of our non-legislative members. Current terms that would have ended before June 30th of the final year of the term have been extended. So all terms now will end on June 30th of a year, and new terms will begin on July 1st of a year. And so this is shift the dates of several of our members. And what we've done is, in consultation with the executive branch, we have extended any terms that would have ended before June 30th to June 30th of that year. And those terms are listed for each of those members in tab 2 of the book. And if there are any questions or concerns, if there may have been an error, just please let me know and we'll adjust those. The other thing is the legislative members, their terms stay consistent with their terms of office. And that is the commission update, Mr. Chairman. For the staff update, we've got several things of note. First is just noting that several of the staff members attended a ceremony last month celebrating the life of Michael Timmy, our late Director of Administration. And at that ceremony, we presented Michael's family with a framed copy of the Senate Joint Resolution that your office, Mr. Chairman, assisted us in getting approved. A copy of the resolution is attached in tab 2. Next, Research Director David Lewis recently left TACIR. David was with us. This was actually his second time with TACIR. He left to take a position as a quality director with the Tennessee Opioid Council, so important work. Dave, of course, has been a valued staff member and has served with us from 2004 to 2007, and again since 2013. So just want to wish David success in his new role if he's watching. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce several new staff members. First, Carrie Jones joined us in March as our new Director of Administration. Carrie came to us from the Department of General Services, where she served as a senior business analyst since 2013. Before she went over to them, she had been a research associate and coordinator with TACIR and served us for several years. So we tend to pull people back. So, and we did with Carrie, and it's a pleasure to have her back, and she's doing great work for us. Carrie, if you could stand and welcome you. Also joining us since our last meeting, we have three new research associates, Cameron Fox, Nathaniel Pettit, and Ismail Tanwi. Cameron holds a Master of Public Administration degree from the University of Tennessee. Nathaniel has a Juris Doctor degree, also from the University of Tennessee. And Ismail holds 2 Master of Science and Computer Science degrees, one in Data Management and Analytics, and one in Quantitative Methods and Mathematical Finance, both from Austin Peay State University. So please join me in welcoming Cameron, Nathaniel, and Ismail. And stand, please. And I'll add that Cameron is another one that we pulled back. You might remember her. She was an intern with us last year. So welcome back, Cameron.
Let me add too that our guests, our employees that we've just honored and their friends and guests beside them, they all landed on the back row when I got here, and only because I insisted that they move to the center of the room they have so they could get the just attention that they deserve, and probably more than they want to hear right now. But a couple of the gentlemen whose name will go unmentioned wanted to argue back a little bit about it, and I know why now, because they have their lawyers. So, but we'll forgive you. And I'm a recovering lawyer too. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Next, I'd like to recognize several staff accomplishments. Senior Research Associate Jennifer Azadi completed a Master of Communication and Information degree in Strategic and Digital Communication in December of 2024. Research Manager Tyler Carpenter has just completed 10 years of state service, and Dr. Michael Strickland has been named a research manager for his work at TACIR. So please join me in congratulating them on these accomplishments. As an aside, Jennifer has already been putting her latest degree to work. Anybody who's not visited the TACIR's new site on LinkedIn, our account on LinkedIn, it's where you can now get even more TACIR updates, and she's been doing a great job with that. So finally, we're pleased to have 2 interns working with us this summer, Peyton Corlew and Will Brennan. Peyton recently completed a Master of Public Policy degree at the University of Tennessee, and Will is a student at the Belmont University College of Law. So please join me in welcoming Peyton and Will. Will. Sorry, Will. All right, Mr. Chairman, that completes staff and commission updates.
Thank you, Director Lippert. And I would call the members' attention to tab 3, the fiscal year 24-25 work program accomplishments, amendments, and new research plans. I believe there is an amendment that will require a vote, but I will turn it over to Melissa Brown, our Deputy Executive Director, for a presentation.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, just checking. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, I'm Melissa Brown, Deputy Executive Director at TACIR, and we will be reviewing tab 3. I do want to point out that this year we've tried to streamline the docket book a little bit. So rather than you seeing me twice, once for this and once for the work program amendment, we've rolled those together. So there's a little bit different structure to the memo this year that I want to go through. So we will be looking at the accomplishments from the past fiscal year, 24-25, proposed amendments to the work program, and the draft research plans. So if you'll notice, there are subtabs A through F behind this tab. Those are draft research plans for each of the proposed studies. Within each research plan is a timeline. It gives the due date and the benchmarks for progress through the report. And there's also a copy of the legislation that requests the study. So the memo, going back to page 1 of the memo, is divided into 2 main sections. The first is the status of existing work program projects, and then starting on page 9 is the work program amendment. Now, all of the accomplishments that I'm about to go through will be included in our next biennial report, which will represent the work from 2024-25 and 2025-26. And I would like to say at any point, if you have any questions, please let me know. So going on to the status of existing work program projects, this is divided into subsections. The first is recurring mandates. And I don't know if you know that you have 7 statutorily required recurring mandates. So each one is listed, and within the section for that is the statute or the public chapter that requires that work. The first, of course, is to have commission meetings, which you did have all meetings required by statute over the past year. Going on to page 2, education fiscal capacity. The fiscal capacity model for the 2025-26 school year has already been calculated and transmitted to the State Board of Education, the State Department of Education, and the Controller of the Treasury, which was done in April of 2025. Michael Mount will be recapping this year's model later in this meeting, and then the next index is due May of 2026. Next is the Public Infrastructure Needs Inventory. As you may recall, you approved this year's report at your January meeting. Staff collected information from 144 school systems, the 95 counties, 346 municipalities, and 250 other entities. Staff is simultaneously gathering and checking survey data for next year's report. And at this time, I'd also like to thank the efforts of the development districts and their staff for helping gather this information and submit that and help us review to have a comprehensive look of the infrastructure needs of Tennessee. Next is Public Chapter 1101, the Growth Policy Act. The Commission continues to monitor this issue. At the bottom of page 2, the electric generation and transmission cooperatives. We know this is our annual TVA pilots report. Again, going on to page 3, you approved this at your January meeting. Staff will be presenting the annual update at your January 2026 meeting to meet the statutory deadline of February 2026. Taxes. Now, we've listed this for a couple of years. This is a new requirement under Public Chapter 341, Acts of 2023. And this public chapter was passed in response to a report that you issued regarding adding additional certification tiers that allow smaller businesses to file and pay their personal property tax without the cumbersome process of itemizing all of their property. But the act also requires the commission to monitor and report on the effects of this act. So we've had to wait for the act to be implemented, for data to be reported, for small businesses to report under this act. And we expect some data sometime this year and hope to have you a report by the end of the year. And then finally is the biennial report, and you approved the most recent biennial report at your January meeting. So that's the recurring mandates. Now on to requested studies that were requested by the General Assembly or requested by the Commission. And these are reports that were published in the last fiscal year. And I also want to say this is a little bit something different about the memo that I hope is an improvement. There's no longer a summary of every report in the body of the memo. What we've done is put a copy of the TACIR Insight at the back of the memo, which for each report is a one-page summary of how the report came to us, a little bit of background about the project, and any significant findings and recommendations. And for those of you using electronic devices, there's a link for you to go to. And for all of our published reports, we put the TACIR Insight on our website every year anyway. So the first report released was a report on Tennessee water systems, the condition of and best practices for them. The next was a breath of fresh air, reducing youth vaping in Tennessee. There was a study on improving policies and addressing regulatory barriers to grow and support Tennessee's childcare industry. Next was an equitable vendor compensation, consider the relative cost of sales tax collection. And at the top of page 4, a contract addendum could resolve potential issues for school districts seeking TennCare reimbursements. And I will say that behind tab 4, when we go through the legislative update, Hannah will be reviewing any legislation that passed related to any of these studies. We have 4 ongoing reports. We have one draft report that is going to be presented today for your review and comment. Because the teams are going to be presenting more detailed information about the report, I'm just going to name and list them here. Real estate fraud, draft for review and comment. Crime labs, we also have a draft for review and comment. And then we have 2 reports for final review, but we're going to wait on the District Attorney General staffing, I think, Mr. Chair, Cliff, until our next meeting. Is that right? So we'll be waiting on that one. And then finally, the rolling stock study, which was requested by Mayor Ryle, the final report will be presented for approval. Going on to page 5, there's additional research. So we have recurring mandates, we have requested studies. Additional research provided by the commission includes the weekly economic updates that you receive via email that are also posted to the website. We have our partnership with Middle Tennessee University regarding the Tracking Tennessee's Economic Indicators website. We have a portion of our website devoted to fiscal federalism, which looks at the potential effects of federal fiscal policies on state and local governments. And staff has said they should be able to update that portion of the website within the next month. They're finishing up quality control and getting ready to publish that data. Staff continues to review and study the fiscal challenges facing local governments. And finally, the county profiles portion of our website, where we analyze the county profiles to better understand policy implications of local fiscal and economic conditions. And this is another portion of our website we hope to have completely updated in the next month. No pressure there, teams. I'm just letting them know where we are. They've done a good job. It's a lot of data to pull together. Finally, staff provides research support. We respond to requests for information from members of the General Assembly, legislative committees, state officials, state agencies, local governments, the public, and the media. Over the past year, we start with listing presentations presented by staff to outside groups. They presented six presentations. The first was by Tyler Carpenter, Safeguarding the Southeast, Innovative Stormwater Solutions for a Resilient Future, to the Infra Day Conference. Next, Dr. Lippard presented TACIR, the update on recent and current projects of interest to county mayors, to the Tennessee Association of County Mayors. Michael Mount presented a fiscal capacity overview to municipal area school superintendents. Dr. Lippard presented again TACIR, Building Consensus Through Collaboration, to the Southeastern Conference for Public Administration. Dr. Strickland presented on housing affordability to the Tennessee Government Financial Officers Association. Bob Morio presented a summary of our child care study to the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce Workforce Development Conference. And Jennifer Arzate presented the youth vaping study to the Smoke Free Tennessee 2 Joule for School webinar. Staff continues to participate in interagency coordination that includes holding an annual development districts workshop to provide training and respond to questions regarding the infrastructure needs inventory. Dr. Owen serves on 3 different task forces with the Economic and Community Development Department related to broadband, including Digital Opportunity Task Force, the Digital Opportunity Series, and the Infrastructure Series. And beginning in January of 2026, Dr. Lippard will begin to serve on the Tennessee Investment and Student Achievement Review Committee. Moving on to using technology for information, I'll just highlight a few things. Cliff has already stolen my thunder about the LinkedIn website. Jennifer Arzate's done a great job of getting our LinkedIn page up and running, and we've already had positive response to that. We continue to update and use our Facebook page to announce reports, other topics of interest, and other work by other agencies. And our staff, I'd like to give a shout out to Teresa Gibson and Mark Patterson here. They are continuously working to make our website accessible to all and to refine our data visualization for some of our larger databases, including fiscal capacity and the infrastructure reporting. Moving down to the middle of page 7, our administrative staff are equally busy. They administered 10 contracts over the past year, 9 with the development districts, and then the one I mentioned earlier with Middle Tennessee over the Economic Indicators website. And they effectively manage and efficiently manage our budget and our procurement process. And then we continue to encourage staff, especially during their first year of employment, to complete the first level of our TACIR in-house training pyramid. It's a very rigorous training program that we developed specifically for the type of work we do at TACIR. That's all the accomplishments I have over the past year. Next, we move on to the work program amendment, which begins on page 9. And Mr. Chair, I'll defer to you on how you want to proceed. This year, it is a little bit easier. The studies I have to present were all requested by both houses of both chambers of the General Assembly. So each one has a public act associated with it.
Thank you, madam. Will recognize you to present the amendment, and then at that time, when you conclude that, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment.
Absolutely. Thank you. So again, there are draft research plans for each proposed study that we're about to go through. So beginning at the top of the page, Public Chapter 418, Acts of 2025, request a study regarding availability of housing and other treatment facilities for juvenile offenders who have been adjudicated delinquent and committed to the Department of General Services, the availability of local juvenile detention centers and other facilities for the housing and treatment of juvenile offenders who have been detained by the juvenile court prior to an adjudicatory hearing, and whether there's a need for additional housing or other treatment facilities for those juvenile offenders. This one does come with a due date of January 31st, 2026. Oh, keep going. Sorry. I misunderstood my instructions. Next is Public Chapter 445, Acts of 2025, to study and prepare a report on recommendations on the continua of care in Tennessee and how they can be approved. The study should include a survey of continua of care in other states and compare them to those in Tennessee. We have another January 31st, 2026 due date. The third study is requested by Public Chapter 416, Acts of 2025, to study the feasibility of implementing and the potential effects of enacting insurance coverage requirements for habilitative and rehabilitative speech therapy as a treatment for stuttering. This study has a due date of July 31st, 2026. The next requested study is by Public Chapter 438, Acts of 2025, to study sustainable funding sources that meet Tennessee's future transportation infrastructure needs. This study has a due date of September 30th, 2026. Next, a study is requested by Public Chapter 102, Acts of 2025, to study the impact that the cosmetology and barbering professions have in Tennessee. There is no statutory due date assigned with this project. And I believe the next one is our last one. It adds a study requested by Public Chapter 413, Acts of 2025, to study the economic impact on counties that are required to provide ambulance services, which counties provide services directly or franchise those services, which municipalities provide ambulance services, and whether there are policy changes that could benefit the overall health and delivery of ambulance service in Tennessee. TACIR is also asked to study emergency and non-emergency transport reimbursement, including from commercial payers, Medicare, Medicaid, and the way counties and municipalities fund the deficit at which these services operate. And Mr. Chairman, that is all the requested studies to add to the work program this year.
Excuse me. Motions, there a second on the motion to approve? Second. Is there any discussion of the amendment? Excuse me, the motion to approve the amendment? There being none, we'll take it on a voice vote. Those in favor of approval of the 2025-26 work program amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. It carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Now I will call your attention, members, to the next tab, which is tab 4, our legislative update. And I'll recognize Ms. Newcomb, Hannah Newcomb, our senior research associate. You're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Good. Thank you and good morning. As mentioned, this is a legislative update for 2025, which can be found behind tab 4 in your docket book. As always, with the legislative update, I will be reviewing the legislation that came before the General Assembly this session that's related to past TACIR work. To begin, broadband internet access was a topic of 2 notable reports from the Commission. One in 2017, broadband internet deployment availability and adoption in Tennessee, and one in 2021, broadband internet deployment availability and adoption in Tennessee, 4 years after the Broadband Accessibility Act, Public Chapter 228, Acts of 2017. Public Chapter 449, Acts of 2025, extends the sale and use tax exemption for purchases and leases of equipment and infrastructure used to produce broadband communication services or provide internet access by 2 years, removing the previous June 2025 end date. This year's report, Improving Policies and Addressing Regulatory Barriers to Grow and Support Tennessee's Childcare Industry, found that there are opportunities for state agencies to improve services, streamline processes, and better align policies in ways that lower barriers to opening and expanding facilities and reduce operational burdens on childcare providers. The report also found that there are opportunities for local governments to support current childcare businesses and encourage new ones, and noted that the state could also provide more support for childcare workers. Several pieces of legislation introduced this year address one or more recommendations from the report. The report recommended that a list of the underutilized or vacant property within a local education agency be made available to prospective childcare business owners. Public Chapter 276, Acts of 2025, took up this recommendation, allowing a childcare agency to lease or purchase underutilized property from local education agencies in which one or more childcare agencies are located, provided that the childcare agency is licensed by the Department of Human Services. A similar piece of legislation, Senate Bill 1014 by Senator Oliver and House Bill 698 by Representative Kemper, was re-referred to the Senate Calendar Committee and taken off notice in the House Education Committee. Public Chapter 135, Acts of 2025, enacts various changes to the licensing exemption categories for programs and activities that fall within the definition of a child care agency. The law exempts gym care and Tennessee professional sport event care from licensing, along with programs that provide child care for 5 or fewer children in certain circumstances. It also removes the requirement for a drop-in center that provides child care for certain hours to register as casual care. Senate Bill 36 by Senator Campbell and House Bill 156 by Representative Clemens would exempt child care agencies from the state's business tax and require the state to allocate the amount of these taxes that derive from child care services and would have been received by counties and municipalities from the 2023-24 fiscal year. The bill was referred to the first calendar of 2026. Senate Bill 902 by Senator Oliver and House Bill 992 by Representative Love would adopt the report's recommendation that a program be established to provide payments to eligible child care workers based on longevity, and added the provision that a program be created to provide early childhood educators with child care payment assistance. The bill was taken off notice in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee and the House Health Subcommittee. Senate Bill 1013 by Senator Oliver and House Bill 1069 by Representative Glenn would void homeowners associations restrictions prohibiting the operation of a licensed child care agency. The bill failed to secure a second in the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee and was taken off notice in the House Cities and Counties Subcommittee. Senate Bill 315 by Senator Yarborough would create the Workers Need Child Care Act, establishing a special account within the state general fund administered by the Department of Human Services and used to fund nonprofit entities opening new licensed child care agencies. The legislation was introduced in the Senate, but did not progress. Senate Bill 1378 by Senator Watson and House Bill 1238 by Representative Haston would create the Division of Early Child Care and Education within the Department of Education, but the legislation was taken off notice in the Senate Education Committee and not taken up in the House. Moving right along, criminal statutes of limitations was the focus of the Commission's December 2018 report, Refining Tennessee's Criminal Statutes of Limitations, and the subject of Public Chapter 291, Acts of 2025. The law extends the statute of limitations for criminal prosecution of certain child sexual abuse felonies from 25 years to 30 years from the child's 18th birthday. It also extends the statute of limitations for a civil action based on child sexual abuse from 15 years to 30 years from the child's 18th birthday. The Commission's 2020 report, Improving Victim Safety with Global Positioning, GPS monitoring, as a condition of release for defendants accused of domestic violence, recommends that local governments using GPS monitoring for pretrial defendants consider prioritizing certain types of offenses, including those involving domestic violence. This session, the General Assembly considered several bills that would affect GPS monitoring requirements in the state. Senate Bill 388 by Senator Taylor and House Bill 358 by Representative Hardaway would require the court or magistrate to order a defendant to wear a GPS device as a condition of bail if the defendant was arrested for an offense during which the defendant possessed a firearm or used force against a person, domestic assault, burglary of a freight or passenger car, reckless driving, drag racing, or a second offenses of burglary or theft, unless the court or magistrate finds the offender is no longer a threat to the alleged victim or public safety. The bill was referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee and deferred to summer study by the House Criminal Justice Subcommittee. Switching gears, in December 2021, the Commission finalized its report exploring the feasibility of a gold depository in Tennessee, which recommended against the formation of a state-backed gold depository. This session, 2 bills relating to the Commission's report and the state's storage of and transactions involving precious metals were introduced but did not pass. Senate Bill 167 by Senator Bailey and House Bill 440 by Representative Hulsey would allow the state treasurer to enter into an agreement with an entity to make capital improvements, construct or maintain a structure, or improve the operation of a facility to produce and ship orders of bullion products for the state's depository. Senate Bill 168 by Senator Bailey and House Bill 439 by Representative Hulsey would create a restricted account for the purchase and sale of precious metal, bullion, or specie, and authorize the state treasurer, with approval of the comptroller of the Treasury, to purchase and sell precious metal, bullion, or specie with funds from that account. Moving on, the professional privilege tax in Tennessee, the issue discussed in the Commission's 2016 report, Professional Privilege Tax in Tennessee, Taxing Professionals Fairly, was once again the subject of several bills. In its report, the Commission did not make a specific recommendation on eliminating the privilege tax, but it did note that eliminating the tax entirely would cost the state an estimated $88 million per year. Senate Bill 397 by Senator Rose and House Bill 189 by Representative Gant would completely repeal the professional privilege tax for tax years beginning on and after June 1st, 2026, but the bill was taken off notice in the Senate and House. Lodging taxes and their effect on the state's hospitality and tourism industry, the subject of the Commission's 2016 report, structuring lodging taxes to preserve the economy and encourage tourism, was likewise the subject of several pieces of legislation considered this session. In its report, the Commission reviewed the way the state levies taxes on lodging, noting that Tennessee allows local governments to levy lodging taxes and local sales taxes to lodging. Public Chapter 364, Acts of 2025, requires a hotel operator to remit the hotel tax to the municipality rather than issuing a credit or refund to a person who has maintained occupancy for 30 continuous days and cease collecting the tax for the remainder of the person's stay. The legislation will only apply to rental agreements entered into, renewed, or amended after July 1st, 2025. Senate Bill 154 by Senator Pody, which was not accompanied by a House bill, would also make changes to the hotel-motel tax by extending the period in which Davidson County can charge an additional 50-cent tax on the occupancy of a hotel room by 12 years. The bill was referred to the Senate State and Local Government Committee, but it did not progress further. This session, the General Assembly also reviewed several pieces of legislation that address the state's utility needs. One piece of legislation relates back to the Commission's 2023 report, Managing Solar Energy Development to Balance Property Rights and Consumer Protection with the Protection of Land and Communities, which tackled the topic of solar power. This year, Senate Bill 132 by Senator Wally and House Bill 149 by Representative Gant was introduced and would establish a regulatory framework for solar energy facilities in the state. The bill was referred to the Senate Energy, Agriculture, and Natural Resources Committee and the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Subcommittee, but did not progress further. And finally, this year's report, A Breath of Fresh Air, Reducing Youth Vaping in Tennessee, identified potential pathways to address youth vaping that would not unduly burden businesses or adults who choose to who choose to vape. The General Assembly considered several bills centered on vaping this session. Public Chapter 324, Acts of 2025, requires the Department of Revenue to maintain a directory on its website that lists all authorized vapor products. The legislation also levies a privilege tax at the rate of 10% of the wholesale price on an open system vapor product. Senate Bill 562 by Senator Briggs and House Bill 591 by Representative Ashley would further regulate retail vapor product stores and make various changes to provisions regarding youth access to tobacco, smoking hemp, and vapor products, including taking up the report's recommendation of universal carding. The bill was set for the Senate Finance Ways and Means Committee and taken off notice in the House. Public Chapter 118, Acts of 2025, requires prospective purchasers of tobacco, smoking hemp, vapor products, or smokeless nicotine products to produce proof of age prior to a sale being made. Under this law, a seller is not required to demand presentation of proof of age if a prospective purchaser appears 50 years old or older. That is all, and I would be happy to take any questions that you have.
Yes, there's no vote required on this report, but I'd be happy to recognize members who have a question. Are there any questions that you have for the very extensive report? Any questions? Sorry, did you have one? Okay. Well, there being none then, thank you very much for your report. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will take you now, members, to tab 5, the fiscal capacity for fiscal year 25-26. Michael Mount, our research director, will be making the presentation. As he takes his chair there, and Mr. Mount, are you ready? Then I recognize you for purposes to make the report.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Michael Mount, and I'll be presenting our annual report on fiscal capacity. I'd like to start by providing a brief overview of the Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement Funding Formula. Of its 4 components, 2 use our fiscal capacity index, the base and weight funding amounts. The base funding is a fixed dollar amount of funding per student, which for fiscal year 2025-26 was set at $7,295 per student. Weighted funding is calculated based on a percentage of the base funding amounts for students that meet the criteria as set in state law. The other 2 components, direct and outcome funding, are 100% funded by the state and are not equalized. Fiscal capacity answers the question, how much each local government must contribute. It's done by measuring the potential ability of local governments to fund education from their own taxable sources. It's a county level model, which means all systems within a county are treated as if they have the same fiscal capacity. The method for calculating fiscal TACIR's model is multiple regression analysis, which is a commonly used method for understanding relationships between factors and determining how much weight to give each factor. The factors include actual tax bases and income with actual revenue as a control. Own source revenue per student is the actual amount of money local governments raise to fund their schools, divided by enrollment or average daily membership, which is abbreviated as ADM. This is the control factor that keeps the estimates within the bounds of what local governments actually do. Sales tax base per student and equalized property assessment per student are the tax base factors. In the TACIR model, equalized residential farm assessment divided by total equalized assessment estimates a county's ability to export their taxes through business activity. Per capita income measures county residents' ability to pay for education and also acts as a proxy for other local tax bases besides the property and sales tax base. The service responsibility is measured by dividing the total number of students in public schools by the entire population. And as you can see in this table, when the tax bases or personal income per capita increase, we can expect to see that fiscal capacity will increase as well. In contrast, when the tax burden or service burden factors increase, we expect the county's fiscal capacity to decrease. An important thing to remember is that a county's share of statewide fiscal capacity depends both on the county's growth in physical capacity and on the growth of the other 94 counties. In this map, the pale yellow counties are keeping pace with the state's overall growth in fiscal capacity. The green counties are growing faster, and the blue counties are not keeping pace with the state. As an example, you can see Hamilton is blue on this map, but it is not, that's because it has not quite kept pace with the state overall. And so it was blue on that previous map. When Hamilton County's fiscal capacity decreased as a share of state total fiscal capacity, that meant that the other 94 counties taken together increased by the same amount. In other words, it's zero sum. We continue to monitor the effects of Blue Oval City on fiscal capacity, and it is increasing Haywood County's fiscal capacity, especially through its tax bases, but also through its per capita income. Here you can see the increases in Haywood's tax bases along with the corresponding increase in its fiscal capacity. Starting this year, the Department of Revenue began providing TACIR staff with data on destination-sourced out-of-state local sales tax bases, which includes sales over the internet. The state total amounted to $39 billion in fiscal year 2023-24. And the CBER model already accounts for this because they base their calculations on collections. And here you can see how that relates to the rest of the local sales tax base. The enrollment in virtual school affects fiscal capacity. Holding all else equal, enrollment in a virtual school, as enrollment in a virtual school increases, the fiscal capacity index of counties that operate virtual school decreases, increasing their state funding, while decreasing state funding for counties with less or no enrollment in virtual schools. In terms of fiscal capacity, virtual school students increase the service responsibility without contributing to the other factors such as sales and property tax bases. State law defines a virtual school as a public school in which the school uses technology to deliver a significant portion of its instruction to its students via the internet or in a virtual or remote setting. There are 59 virtual schools in Tennessee, including 23 that enroll students from across the state. For the purposes of fiscal capacity, those students are counted as enrolled in the virtual schools county, regardless of where the student resides. This year, Union and Johnson counties had the greatest virtual school enrollment. All else being equal, this leads to more state funding for Union and Johnson counties and less state funding for the other 93 counties. And in these two slides, you can see the effect of virtual school students on Union's and Johnson's local revenue per student. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
The members have questions. Are there any questions? Senator Yarborough, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. You're over there now. Thank you for this report and kind of bringing this issue to our attention. I think as we've learned about virtual schools, I think we focus on the ADM side, the fact that it increases the attendance and increases funding that way. But I hadn't considered as much the effect that it actually helps them on both sides. It increases the number of students attending, but it also increases their amount of state funding for each student while decreasing that amount relatively for every other county. I mean, that strikes me as something has a significant effect. I mean, we're talking, I think those two counties alone have something like 6,000 of the virtual school students in the state. It's like $40 million. Should we be adjusting this formula to not calculate? I mean, help me think through, should we just keep going this way, or can TACIR make a change here? Should TACIR make a change here?
Thank you. We don't have a specific recommendation on virtual school students as far as the TACIR's fiscal capacity model, but I think it could be a discussion worth having.
Director?
And this is sorry. This has been discussed at the BEP Review Committee in the past, and with the TACIR Review Committee starting in January of 2026, I suspect this is a topic that will likely be discussed again on how to address the virtual school issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I mean, look, I think there's lots of issues around virtual schools, from performance to everything else. But this particular issue strikes me as something that where the legislative components and the people in education actually need some analysis from the people who understand multivariate regression analysis a little bit more, to understand if there would be any sort of unforeseen consequences or side effects to just removing them from this calculation. I'm just thinking through what the options could be for modifying and what the implications would be.
That is something I think we could model within the existing model, a number of different approaches, taking them out. I don't know if it's possible to identify if we had the information on the home county student, of maybe treating them as if they were students in the home county. There's a couple different ways you could model, and that's something that we could take a look at and report back to the commission on.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just don't think this should be a money maker. I think we're creating a dangerous incentive system for people to run on some of this virtual education side that we should be very careful about doing, especially based on their current low performance in the state.
Senator Campbell's waiting for the floor, but for the director, then the issues that Senator Yarborough has raised in his comments, we'll try to address those as an addendum to this report or a separate report. How will we do this? Because they are some important issues.
We could prepare the staff could prepare an update for the commission. This is just an update on the fiscal capacity model itself, but we can present something to the commission possibly as early as next meeting, if not that meeting, the one after.
All right, unless there's objection, I'm going to ask the director to do that, because I think those are some good questions. Senator Campbell, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to emphasize that I think it would be a great idea to heavily consider the residence of the student. I mean, surely for verification purposes, we have to know where these students reside. It's strange to me that we're calculating it this way when, every other student is calculated based upon where they reside.
Are there other questions further? Yes, Mayor Waters.
Not a question, just a comment. As you all know, Sevier County is a critic, I guess, especially the SEBR model, in that it doesn't take into consideration per capita income. And it is beyond me how you can do physical capacity without a per capita income, number one. And number two, I think Mayor Anderson would agree with me that every year our percentage goes up and the state goes down. We're approaching 70%. And if it continues, we're going to be funding our schools totally if it continues along this. And we've tried to get a base funding somewhere in there that you can't go below, but we've been unable to do that. But we are moving, I think this year we're at 68% local funding to 32%, and that's reverse of what the state average is. And we have 62% of our students are on free or reduced lunch. And that's a statistic that stands out to me when this formula comes out, especially the SEBR. I'm obviously think something needs to be done to protect those of us that are continuing to pay more and more. And like I say, eventually we're going to be paying 100% of our educational costs if it keeps the trend up. Just a comment.
I think Mayor Rogers is waiting for, Mayor Anderson, rather. Rogers Anderson is waiting for the floor, sir. And then I believe Senator Yarbrough. Mayor Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you. I would agree with Mayor Waters. If I could, Mr. Chairman, can I ask a direct question to Michael through you?
Yes.
So on page 5, your physical capacity variables and index, under the column that says ratio of residential and farm to total assessment, a question first. Is that based on the 15-acre greenbelt?
If it's assessed as residential or farm, then it's part of the numerator there. Otherwise, it's not, which would only be commercial, industrial, or utility kinds of properties. I don't know if I answered your question, though.
Well, let me rephrase it and help me out here. Explain to me the ratio of residential and farm to total assessment.
This ratio accounts for differences across counties in the amount of commercial and industrial tax base that they have, recognizing that counties with stronger commercial and industrial tax base can effectively place less of that tax burden on their own residents. In other words, through residential property or farm property taxes. And so in our model, it reduces those counties with greater a ratio of residential and farm property. It reduces their fiscal capacity relative to the others.
I'm not smart enough to answer that with a follow-up question yet. Michael's light years ahead of me. I'm trying to get at, so Mr. Chairman, the green belt is 15 acres. And it's protected in our state and should be protected for a reason. But in those high inflationary periods like we're in, the most that you could raise property taxes on a green belt, I believe, is 23%. And someone that's got a large farm would know that, as opposed to someone that has got a $500,000 home. And it seems to me if the greenbelt is taking effect, what we're trying to get it to do, which is to protect the ag, which 100% support that, then how you value a business in this ratio causes me to wonder, how do you do that? Because most of your greenbelt, most of that is in the unincorporated area, the Larrys and the Rogers and Terrys. You know, we don't have a lot of control with what happens in your city limits, but all of the responsibility of the public education falls back on the county, which is mostly agricultural. Although we get a tax base from the city, I don't doubt that and question that. But I'm trying to understand how that 15 acres even goes into your formula. That's a long-winded statement.
You're recognized for an answer, sir.
It's a little complicated. It goes in as part of the overall property tax base per student variable. But that in a sense is adjusted by our residential and farm variable, or the tax burden variable as we call it. And that effectively reduces the weighting that our model places on residential and farm properties relative to commercial and industrial properties.
Right.
So I see now why this final follow-up, Mayor
Sure.
Waters is not a fan of this. I mean, even with all the commercial business that you got in Sevier County, it certainly doesn't outweigh the fact of what I was just looking at his is below 50%. So it's no wonder you're getting charged those rates, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually just wanted to echo somewhat the points raised both by Mayor Waters and Mayor Anderson. I mean, I think first, I'm very sympathetic to what Sevier County deals with, because Sevier and Davidson are both have significant tourist industries, which are high generators of sales taxes, but sales taxes that, I mean, at some level, the primary beneficiary of the sales tax is the state, as opposed to the property tax, which really benefits the local. So like it increases, we have a huge number in Sevier, Davidson, and a couple other places of sales tax that comes from tourism, but those don't come cheap. Like there's a lot of real local cost that comes with that. And I think that when we see outliers in this table, like in those instances where the people's sales are 2 and 3x what they are in most places, I think it's a recurrent issue as it comes to the legislative front. And I think that Mayor Anderson also raised the point that there's a danger when I mean, it's probably true in Williamson County. It's definitely increasingly true in Davidson County, where, I mean, there's just very little state funding that actually, the per pupil that actually comes into Davidson County is significant, is pretty low from the state as an overall number. And so to ensure that everybody stays invested in this sort of system, I mean, I think we need to figure out some way to guard against the fiscal capacity numbers being so determinative that it ends in counties just not getting much significant investment from the state.
Mayor.
Just to highlight this, and I've never asked Larry this, but you realize the state, I mean, the folks that are in Nashville, you all realize from your green counties all the way down to Shelby, the sales tax does not come back to the county in a proportionate amount. It goes to the cities Half of it goes to the city and the other half goes to the state. I mean, in our budgeting process, I won't receive, in Williams County, I won't receive $5 million in sales tax. I don't know what Larry says, but a lot of his business is in Pigeon Forge and Sevierville. He never sees that sales tax, and that does not flow good with the school system. Now, I'll get great pushback from the school board association because that money floods right into their account. But Larry and I don't have any, or Mayor Frank, we don't have any control. That sales tax goes into schools.
There we go. I've asked the Director Lippert to work with our office and Mr. Mount to set up a meeting in the office to have a more detailed discussion of this, because I would like to know a lot more about it. And I'll let you gentlemen who've asked some questions know if anybody wants to come sit on the meeting, they certainly may. But this is probably a discussion worthy, excuse me, it is an issue worthy of more discussion. All right, let's see. Representative Williams, were you asking for the floor?
Yes,
And then Senator Campbell.
oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Just a quick question. For instance, in Putnam County, there's a partnership between county and city governments where the city taxes, because we don't have city schools. Do you factor in
Think about that.
in each county that as it relates to capacity or no?
Yeah, one of the important things to remember about our fiscal capacity model is that is based on the tax bases. In other words, the actual sales or assessment in that county. What happens to the revenue is not factored into the model.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you send us the regressive analysis formula so we can just see how these things are interacting and being weighted?
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
It's one of the slides. Where's that?
We can share the actual spreadsheet with the formula in it. And it also gives all the.
Yeah, I think this table shows it pretty well. Those are all the factors in the left-hand column.
If I may, I had mentioned a moment ago that I was going to work with, our office is working with you to set up a meeting to discuss this. I think I want to expand it a little bit unless there's an objection. What I am going to do then is I may just create an ad hoc committee of equally balanced with legislators and local officials to sit in, and not just for you to explain this to me in greater detail, but to this committee. Unless there's an objection, I will do that. After I've given it some thought, sometime next week or so, I'll get something out to everybody. And if there's somebody who wants to serve, be sure to let me or Trent Heath in my office know. But I just feel like maybe you can tell from the questions here we're getting, and candidly, as an old former county official, I have a great appreciation for this issue. It hasn't changed a bit since I left off. I just want to expand it. We'll have an ad hoc committee appointed to give further examination of this issue, unless there's objection, and there being none. All right, other questions for the Director Lippert?
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman, and that is that especially during COVID, we heard from the administration, and it's been a bipartisan deal that we hear from the administration about how Sevier County needs to do more promoting and how we need to bring in more revenue for the state. And we're one of the top 3 in the state, and we need to do everything we can to bring in more revenue. And we bring in more revenue, and our what we get back goes down. So it just seems out of whack.
Thank you. Director Lippert.
Just one comment, and that is our Deputy Executive Director, Melissa Brown, has gone online and gotten a little bit more detailed information on how green property is treated in the assessed values that we get from the comptroller's office for the model.
Yes, you're recognized.
Is this on? Okay. And yes, this was a quick Google search, but the source of the data is the tax aggregate report out of the controller's office. And based on a quick review, so the way the Greenbelt is reported within the tax aggregate report, the assessment is based on its present use instead of market value. So qualified Greenbelt properties are assessed based on their current use, potentially leading to a lower tax bill. The specific use is determined by a legal formula, which I am not familiar with, but we can become familiar with it if we need to. And the impact, it says, while the tax aggregate report doesn't explicitly detail the Greenbelt status of individual properties, it reflects the assessed value of these properties, which is influenced by their Greenbelt designation. So the lower assessed value translates into lower reported property tax revenue for the relevant jurisdictions. Does that track with what you were thinking, Mayor?
Mayor. All right. Board and a very thought-provoking report. Thank you very much. And then I will get with you and with others as we put this ad hoc committee together. If there's no other questions, we'll move now to tab 6, the rolling stock, the final report for approval. This will require a vote, and Ms. Jennifer Berry, our research director, will be presenting. Ms. Berry, you are recognized.
Good morning, members. I'm presenting the final report on rolling stock for your approval. The report was prepared in response to Mayor Ryle's request at the January 2024 meeting to study the challenges that state and local governments face when acquiring vehicles such as fire trucks, salt trucks, and school buses. Interviews with over 30 Tennessee officials revealed that there have been large cost increases and long procurement delays, mostly caused by global supply chain disruptions. And these delays, along with the rising costs, are largely beyond the control of governments. Since the draft was presented in January, we just added a few sentences to the report. On page 1, we added an example from the city of Gallatin. On page 15, we added an example from Williamson County. And on page 21, an example from Dixon County. And regarding federal funding programs and emissions regulations for vehicles on pages 4 and 15, we added the sentence, whether the current federal administration will continue or roll back these initiatives is uncertain. And all of this new information is highlighted in the report. The challenges that governments are facing in Tennessee are not unique to our state. They are affecting the entire nation. Governments will generally need to adapt using the resources and strategies already available to them. And one example of adaptation in Tennessee comes from a private EMS company based in Chattanooga that has started buying transit vans and redesigning them with necessary features to function as ambulances, because this is faster and cheaper than ordering and waiting for chassis. The Commission finds there are several strategies that can be implemented without action by the General Assembly that government agencies can use to adapt to the challenges and continue delivering public services. And these strategies include developing vehicle maintenance and replacement plans, leveraging fleet management software and GPS, repairing vehicles instead of replacing them, preparing contingency plans for leasing or renting, and exploring alternative vehicles and consolidating fleets. Well, thank you. I'm happy to answer your questions, and I ask for your approval of this final report.
I will go ahead. I think I'll go ahead and Chair will move the report and get a second, then we're going to open for discussion. We won't take the vote till after the discussion. All right, second from Commissioner. Now, do we have comments or questions for the presenter? Senator Yarbrough.
I was struck by this, and it's probably more familiar to some of those in local government, that the average lead time for acquiring a ladder truck right now is 57 months, like 5 years. I mean, that is kind of an incredible thing. And I mean, especially when it's needed by so many people. I'm curious how much of this is like hard, like when we say global supply chain, does that include or address sort of consolidation within the industry of suppliers? Because I think there are fewer and fewer providers of these, sort of fire engine or ambulances or school buses that are, sort of, a concentration that's sort of targeting government purchases and then raising costs. I'm trying to think, like, do we find that to be the case?
Yes, some stakeholders talked about that while we were working on the report. We didn't mention it specifically in the report, but that is part of the supply chain issues is consolidation, and particularly within the fire truck industry. And I looked, and there's some things recently in the news about that, and there's an investigation that's been proposed at the federal level on that specifically. So that is something that's affecting particularly fire trucks. But I think in general, the heavier vehicles, specialized vehicles, because there are fewer suppliers.
Well, and I'm curious, I mean, given the fact that every city and every state is dealing with a similar issue, what have other states done to try to sort of cut down on that? I mean, I don't know if there is anything without a broader economic intervention, but I mean, has there been policy response in other states to this?
We, based on interviews with other states and the national professional associations, like the Association of State Procurement Officials and a couple other national associations, they did not know of any other state doing anything that really could do anything that Tennessee could do. So no, we didn't. They just basically all emphasized being flexible and adaptable and these strategies that everyone's using to just try to work with it.
And I think Senator Campbell's waiting for the floor, but unless there's objection, I have a question. That's all right. I've looked at this. I'm somewhat familiar with this. I've been out visiting some of my ambulance services, maintenance departments in some of my counties, and this is really a very serious problem. And I appreciate the report, but I'm not sure any of the recommendations really solve the problem. There are probably some interim, with maybe the exception, leverage financial incentives for vehicles. I wasn't sure exactly what you meant there. So would you expound on that? But before you do, it's the problem here is the long delays and waiting to get this equipment, and we're going to ask them. We're going to ask our EMS to continue to repair an ambulance that's got hundreds of thousands of miles on it already. And I certainly do not misconstrue my comments of being argumentative or disrespectful, but I just want to raise that as an issue here. So if you want to comment on that, but I certainly would like to know about maybe financial incentives. What do you mean by that?
Oh, just using any funding that's available, like federal funding particularly.
Well, that's
so
in light of federal policy currently. I doubt there's a lot of federal funding available, and I know there are. We do have grant pools in the state budget that, under the leadership of Chairman Watson, we put together for volunteer fire departments, for example, and other government groups or emergency groups to apply for grants.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funding is frank in the big picture. Funding is scarce.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Campbell, thank you, members.
All updates and modifications are not equal. I'm just wondering if it's been considered in this obvious, emergency lull that we kind of have, the degree to which we're updating or modifying the fleets that we do have. Could more investment be made into that so that it could actually, bridge the gap for us, so that we're not actually getting, I've heard Ubers and, vans where there's not actual medical care or, the equipment that's needed for these people to do their job.
So are you asking if there could be investment in like repairing and maintaining and upgrading vehicles? I mean, governments are doing that because they have to, and they're a lot of them are reprioritizing maintaining their current vehicles to fill gaps while they're waiting for new vehicles. So we didn't suggest investing particularly in upgrading vehicles. but that's happening.
You have one follow-up, ma'am. I think Mayor Rile's waiting for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously if there are supply chain issues that are preventing us from getting new vehicles in our fleet, there are going to be specific parts of those vehicles that are problematic. And so I was just wondering if people have looked specifically. I mean, I'm sure they have. It's an emergency, but it's just something I didn't see addressed here. And so obviously, if we're looking at Lowell's 5 years out, that's a huge problem. So I just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
Mayor Ryle, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the work y'all have done on this. I know it's difficult, and I know you've asked a lot of questions, done a lot of interviews, and you really delved down on this. But, and again, I want to thank the commission for entertaining this. I know it's something that's probably not in our norm that's been done before, but it's just speaking on what else has already been said on this, the difficulty is still there. We're receiving an ambulance next week that we ordered 3 years ago, and that's before this commission was even authorized to be done. So it continues to be a problem. And I appreciate the suggestions, and they're good ones, to work to find replacements, other alternative ways to provide the service. But it's stated it's a long-term issue that we're going to get our hands around, especially with emergency services, transporting patients in ambulances with hundreds of thousands of miles, which is not an exaggeration. It's a true problem. So again, I appreciate y'all's work, but it's still here, and it's something we're going to have to deal with for quite some time. But us locally, even on a state level, it's probably nearly impossible. But asking our federal partners for help, but even grant funding secondary. I've got the money. I'm ready to write checks. I just don't have the product to buy with it from Dixon County taxpayers. So again, we're going to keep exploring this. But thank you again for your work and the staff doing this. I know you put a lot of effort in this. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. Director Lippert, you're recognized, sir.
No, I would just wanted to say that we're already seeing, and this is related to both the mayor's comments and the senator's question. We're already seeing echoes of this in one of our new studies. We're doing the study on ambulance services and how counties are having to be innovative in the way they're providing these services. The team had an interview just last week with Knox County, and they were describing how they're in their contract services for ambulance services in the county. They have a prioritized system where if it doesn't require an ambulance, if a call is deemed a less severe emergency, they basically send what I would call a fast attack vehicle, just a smaller vehicle that doesn't have all the bells and whistles of an ambulance to take care of those. But it's, that's partly to keep the miles off of the ambulance fleet. Yeah, just wanted to add that, Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, Chairman. I just just did a quick Google search, really, because that's the modus operandi of the day, I suppose. But we're the only state in the southeastern United States that doesn't have a fire apparatus manufacturer deliverer. I think one of the recommendations we could do as members of this committee or body would be to provide some exhortation to economic and community development. If their demand is so great, there's somebody out there already doing it. Maybe they should do it here in Tennessee. So I think it'd be important for us to take that into consideration as we do that. Then we'd be supporting a small business that's located here in the state. Possibility of providing economic community development incentives to help them get started, find them land and create jobs here in Tennessee might be a good pathway forward or solution for it.
I can save us some time, Mr. Chairman. I was going to say exactly what Representative Williams was what he just said. So, and the only add-on there is even in some of the equipment such as a chassis where, maybe one of the manufacturers isn't producing that piece of equipment in quantity because there's not the volume demand. We're already doing incentives. I'm not talking about adding new incentives, but we're already doing incentives for a lot of folks in the manufacturing business. And maybe we can encourage them in order to get those incentives to try to make an extra effort to meet some of those needs. So again, maybe just a little bit of an add-on for discussion with ECD.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there other questions or comments? Mayor Waters?
The only comment I'd have is what we're trying to do is order ahead of time. We're doubling up. The issue in that is they put when you do a purchase order, it goes against the budget that you're in. And so we're trying to order not for a couple of years down the road, and it sort of gives the budget out of whack, but we're trying to order ahead of time on our ambulances and our fire vehicles because we know it's going to take 2 to 3 years to get them.
Other comments from the members? Well, there being none, we appreciate the comments and the presentation. I believe this one requires a vote. And I believe the motion has been made to approve with a second, and we were going to discuss it and then take the vote. Are there any further questions? We will take a voice vote. I'm sorry. Yes. Mayor
Mr.
Franklin?
Chairman, should we formalize just a note to add to the final report what was stated about the ECD as just an
Yes.
additional bullet?
All right. Okay. What we'll do, if you'll allow me to navigate the procedure here, can we? I guess I'll ask Director Lippert. Can we take Representative Williams' comments as an amendment to this report? How do you want us to do that? To make it an amendment to the report, I think would give it a little bit more validity. And it, is there?
No, that will be fine. Chairman, could I ask Chairman Williams to restate
Yes. Chairman's going to.
I think in roundabout ways, I would just say as a recommendation of the report that this TACIR body send a letter of exhortation to the Commissioner of Economic Community Development, requesting him to, in his office, to solicit and encourage and incentivize, if necessary, the relocation of a company that could to the borders of Tennessee that could provide these services that are in great demand for our local governments.
There is a motion to the report by Representative Williams with a second from Mayor Frank. Is there any comment and debate on the motion to amend? All right, we will vote on the motion to amend. Those in favor of the motion to amend the report say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. It carries. The report is amended. Now it's in front of you for a vote. Is there any other questions or comments? Those in favor of the final report on rolling stock, a final report for, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? It carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Berry, very much. I believe that we're going, unless there's objection, we're going to defer the report, the staffing report, the final report on the district attorney staffing until the next meeting. And the director's doing that at the request of the chairman, who'd like to have some more time to study the issue. Is there an objection? There being none, then we'll go to tab 8, the Public Chapter 941. It's a draft report for review and comment. And I believe Bob Morio is back again and presenting for us. As he comes up, I'll direct your attention to tab 8. You're recognized, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Today, I'm presenting a draft of the Commission's report on protecting property owners and reducing the risk of real estate fraud in Tennessee, which has been submitted as tab 8 for your review and comment. It was prepared in response to Public Chapter 941, Acts of 2024, which directed the Commission to study the prevalence of real estate fraud in Tennessee, different schemes used to perpetrate real estate fraud, methods used by other states to combat real estate fraud, and best practices for local government officials registering and recording documents related to real estate transactions. It also directed the Commission to provide suggested statutory revisions designed to reduce the risk of real estate fraud for property owners in the state. The draft report includes 3 recommendations focused on strengthening the roles of notaries public and registers of deeds and recognizing and preventing real estate fraud. Because real estate fraud can happen in many ways, and criminal charges can fall under broader categories like forgery or wire fraud, crime statistics for specific types of real estate fraud are difficult to find. But there are many indications that real estate fraud in general is prevalent throughout the United States and in Tennessee. In 2025, the National Association of Realtors surveyed members around the country about deed and title fraud. 63% of respondents reported awareness of fraud in their markets within the past 12 months. Locally, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation collects detailed crime data from local law enforcement agencies. And for incidents of theft where property is reported stolen, they can even include theft of dwellings and other structures. According to TBI data on theft of real property, 185 dwellings were reported stolen across 50 counties from 2019 through 2024, which averages out to about 2 or 3 per month. 2 counties, Shelby and Hamilton, were responsible for 38% of the state's total, with 48 and 23 incidents respectively over the 6-year period. For comparison purposes, there were about 96,000 home sales in 2023, according to information from the Tennessee Housing Development Agency, meaning on average, roughly one home was reported stolen per roughly every 3,000 home sales. Staff with the Memphis Police Economic Crimes Bureau estimate that they see 1 to 3 cases of real estate fraud per month. Representatives from the Tennessee Registers Association said that members in Blount, Knox, Loudoun, Rutherford, Sevier, and Williamson counties have also reported seeing problems with fraud. Moving ahead to the draft's recommendations, notaries are entrusted to witness and acknowledge signatures on important documents, including real property documents, verifying that individuals signing are who they say they are. This responsibility puts notaries on the front lines of preventing fraud. But people seeking to commit fraud may attempt to deceive notaries by falsifying information, concealing their identities, or through other means. Notaries, therefore, should understand the methods criminals use to commit fraud and consequences that could result from notarizing fraudulent documents. They should also be aware of potential liabilities against them if proper procedures are not followed. 26 other states require either training, an exam, or both for an initial notary commission. I didn't do that. 26 states require either training, an exam, or both for initial notary commission to provide regular in-person notary services. 16 states require continuing education or additional training to renew a notary commission. Tennessee is one of the 24 states where neither training nor an exam is required to become a traditional in-person notary, though it will begin requiring online notaries to complete training and pass an exam specific to that as of January 1st, 2026. To tackle deed fraud, the National Notary Association and other groups associated with the real estate industry and consumer protection recommend that all notary applicants complete some instructional training before being commissioned. So because notaries public can help deter fraud by witnessing the signing of important documents and verifying that individuals signing are who they say they are, the first recommendation in the draft report is that Tennessee require in-person notaries to complete an instructional course on notary laws, ethical requirements, and best notarial practices, including specific guidance about recognizing and preventing fraud, both when applying to become a notary for the first time and when renewing a notary's commission. Currently, Tennessee permits notaries to verify identity of individuals signing documents based on government-issued identifications, but it doesn't require that they do so. State also permits notaries to verify an individual's identity based solely on the notary's personal familiarity with them, or having familiarity with another individual who can vouch for the signer, which can potentially open the door to fraud and forgery. To help fight fraud, the state of California acted to strengthen its identification requirements for notarizations. California changed its laws to prohibit notaries from relying solely on personal knowledge to identify principals or credible witnesses in the performance of a notary act. Government-issued identification must be used and must be recorded in the notary's journal. And although California is currently the only state that completely prohibits notaries from relying solely on personal knowledge to identify document signers, it's not the only state that requires information on signers be recorded in a notary's journal. For in-person notarization in Tennessee, a journal record is only required when the notary charges a fee for their services, and the law doesn't specify what information must be recorded in that journal. A notary's journal can help ensure consistent, proper notarization. In several states, if a notary chooses to check an individual's credentials to verify identity, those credentials must be recorded in the notary's journal. Maintaining notary journals for several years can help ensure that future fraud investigations have access to potentially important documentation. 24 states require notaries to keep journals for 10 years. For online notarizations in Tennessee, the state's Online Notary Public Act of 2018 requires a secure electronic record of electronic documents notarized by the online notary public and lists what each record must include. Those electronic journals must be kept for at least 5 years. There is no required length of time for maintaining journals of in-person notarizations in Tennessee. And so the second recommendation of the draft report comes with 3 parts. First, the report recommends that the state also require notaries to verify the identity of individuals by means of a government-issued credential. Personal knowledge of a credible witness can only suffice if the witness also has a government-issued credential. Second, the state should require notaries to maintain a journal of all notarizations performed in person and, as is already required of online notaries, keep these journals for at least 5 years. And third, the state should require notaries to ensure journal records specifically include these things: the date, time, and type of the notary act, a description of the document or proceedings, the name, address, and signature of each individual signer or witness identifying a signer, description of the evidence used to identify any signer and witness identifying a signer, and itemized fees, if any, paid by the signer to the notary. Next, the report suggests that authorizing a process for registers of deeds to review or refuse to record suspicious documents could prevent fraud. Registering a deed is another point where real estate fraud can be committed or prevented. The Register of Deeds has a statutory duty to determine whether each instrument offered for registration is entitled to registration under the laws of the state. But while registers can refuse to register an illegible document or an instrument or document that has not been properly authenticated, unless there is a specific statute providing an exception to the requirement that the Register of Deeds register all deeds entitled to registration under the laws of the state promptly and correctly, the Register of Deeds must file that deed. Some states provide local officials with greater authority to combat fraud at the point where deeds are registered. In particular, the report highlights Illinois, which authorizes counties to establish a fraud referral and review process to review deeds and instruments and refer any of them to an administrative law judge for review when the recorder has reason to believe that the filing may be fraudulent, unlawfully altered, or intended to unlawfully cloud or transfer title of any real property. Illinois' refer and review process is beneficial for addressing fraud for 2 reasons. First, it can relieve property owners from the burden and expense of having to recover their stolen property when fraud is caught by putting it through the judicial system. And second, it ensures that those trying to register deeds receive due process in the event that genuine property transfers are incorrectly flagged for review. Several other states also give county registers or recorders varying degrees of discretion to refuse to record suspicious documents. And so because a process for registers of deeds to review or refuse to record suspicious documents, as several other states have authorized, could prevent fraudulent deeds from being recorded in Tennessee and stop those who attempt to commit real estate fraud from completing and profiting from those fraudulent transactions, the draft report's third recommendation is that the General Assembly authorize counties to establish fraud referral and review processes, possibly similar to the process authorized in Illinois, for real estate documents that County Register of Deeds have reasons to suspect are fraudulent. Thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Representative Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you. I was unaware. I guess most of us use notaries at some point in time. I was unaware that that the ID was not a requirement. I guess my concern, I'm in complete agreement with your analysis that we should require some form of ID or verification of someone's identity. But how, if we were to do that, how would you similarly do that if we allowed online notarization to occur?
Thank you for the question. So there's a process in place for ID verification for online notaries. They're able to use technological, either through video, through ID verification, like third-party software and things that you're doing when you're not doing the notarization in person. All that is currently in place, just because of the nature of not being there in person when the online notary law was passed. Those verification things were included with it, but nothing similar was amended to in-person notarizations.
Did you have any stats? Speaking of the notaries, the one thing that kind of concerns me, just from my own personal experience, obviously you spoke with a lot more people than who I've spoken with about this, but being having a little bit of interest in title business and all that, I don't know in 17 years if I've seen a notary that didn't do what they were supposed to do. The fraud that I'm seeing is online type fraud, a fake notary. And so I guess I wonder, do we have any stats about where the actual notaries aren't doing what they're supposed to? Because I would hate to create a bunch of new requirements for notaries if they're not the problem for small businesses.
Thank you, sir, for the question. And that is definitely the balance that we've been trying to deal with, of the overwhelming majority of transactions and documents and things being on the up and up, and to not gum up the works with a whole bunch of overarching sweeping changes. So bringing, and like you, I think anytime I've ever had anything notarized, it's been show them the ID, you're writing it down. I think, a lot of, like you say, a lot of notaries, probably most of them, are diligent in the work that they do. And so trying to tackle the issue of completely falsifying notary qualifications is part of why the last recommendation of having registers of deeds be another sort of a checkpoint, where if something looks fishy about a notarization, a signature, the stamp or whatever, there's at least an ability to potentially have that reviewed, go back and find out if that notary actually did notarize that, which is kind of the case. That what happens is you can just be making up notary stuff as you go, and then reach out and actually have an opportunity to verify with the notary whose signature and stamp is on that piece of paper, whether they actually did it or not.
Am I on here? Can you hear? So I agree. I think the great thing is the Register of Deeds having more discretion. I think that is huge, and I love that advice there. That's probably where the most of it is going to come in, that I've personally seen, would be their ability, so they're not hamstrung to say, look, we have to take it. There's this sovereign citizen that's filing deeds on people's property. But just to rehash, if we are able to come up with those types of stats, I think training is always good. But as you know, people take advantage of, then, hey, sure, I'll start up a business that will train notaries, and now I'm going to charge $100 here and $100 there. Before you know it, the small businesses are having more fees that they got to pay. So that was just my question.
Sure.
But I appreciate your report, and I think it's great that the work you've done.
Thank you. And just I can add to just that last little bit that you said there. There is some information in here when we talk about the training requirements in the other states. Of it doesn't seem like 6 hours is about as much as it is. There's some of the states choose to fund and provide, a training, or it's through third parties. It's 50 to it is, another cost, but it's not like making them go through, weeks and weeks of, arduous licensing or anything like that.
Senator Briggs, you're recognized.
I think this is on now. In going back and doing your case study reviews of where these frauds had occurred, is the problem of notaries notarizing signatures or identities for people who aren't who they say they are, or is it a problem with fraudulent, in other words, people have counterfeit stamps and then using forged signatures, and it's really not a notary that's notarizing it. And of course, your second point where that can be captured is with the Register of Deeds. But I was wondering, what is when the fraud does occur, what's the problem? But because just as we mentioned, it doesn't do a lot of good to give notaries more training if it's counterfeit stamps and forged signatures.
Well, thank you, Senator. And that kind of why one of the things I said, starting the presentation out, that getting statistics specifically for exactly how a particular case of real estate fraud happened is challenging, because we've got, like the TBI, the deed fraud, theft of an actual property, but without going in and looking to see each individual case, whether that was forgery, whether it was identity theft, whatever other sort of crimes are associated. And that's where a lot of these can be prosecuted under a lot of different, wire fraud, mail fraud, forgery, criminal impersonation, identity theft. So trying to really drill down and see, is it one specific, is it fake notary? Is it fake IDs? Is it, fake IDs tricking real notaries into stamping things? That's just information that's not available without really diving into case by case basis.
And I would agree with what Bob said, but based on the research from the professional organizations, notary organizations, and other associations, it seems to be sort of a mix. And based on this mix, one of their recommendations is some type of formal training. When we'd looked at ways to get also more at the fake notary issue, which again is the Register of Deed does allow us to get at that some, but as Bob also mentioned, most of those offenses are already crimes. There are already ways to get at those. So we tried to focus on the less strenuous approaches that would address the notaries being tricked and help them identify potential fraud without putting too much of a burden on notaries. And as a notary myself, I wanted to make sure we didn't put too much burden on notaries. Yeah.
Question. At one time, when I was county mayor and met with the county commission on a regular basis, part of the agenda would be to approve notaries. I presume that practice and that prerogative still exists. How would any of these requirements affect the commission's authority to approve? I mean, it would seem to, I'm just being very technical here, but the commission's approval is the final thing. So
I think we might have to take a look at some of the specifics of the other states where they require the training, but I would believe that when a person is submitting their application there for the commission to become a notary, somewhere in that process, including that they have completed the training and signed off on having completed that training as part of the application process, and then that would be reviewed by the county.
So, but it's all right, and this might require a statute, but the commission could have the commission could have the prerogative then to approve someone who perhaps did not take the training. That might be something you want to look at.
Thank you. Yeah, I think specifics of exactly how the statute and requirement is written would be important to making sure that's the case.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions? Are there other? There being none, thank you very much for a very good report. I don't believe we're voting. We're not voting on that one. I believe we'll now move to tab 9 on the capacity of the crime labs in Tennessee, the draft report for review and comment by Madison Thorne. Ms. Thorne, you were already, I was going to say as you make your way, but you're there. So I recognize you for purpose of making this presentation, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman. In recent years, Tennessee has made progress in addressing forensic evidence backlogs, but challenges remain, ones that impact cases, communities, and public trust in our criminal justice system. In response to ongoing concerns about the effects of evidence backlogs and turnaround times, Senate Bill 2877 by Senator Kyle and House Bill 2961 by Representative Hardaway were introduced in the 113th General Assembly. These bills aim to direct the Commission to study the feasibility of establishing a crime lab in Shelby County. The bill passed in the Senate but did not advance in the House. At the May 2024 Commission meeting, Representative Williams requested that the Commission undertake a broader study to examine the feasibility and need for establishing additional crime labs throughout the state. This broader study includes an evaluation of the existing crime lab's capacity to process evidence efficiently and considers where any new labs could be located to best optimize state resources. Increasing crime lab capacity in general involves increasing the number of staff available to conduct tests, the lab space available for those staff to work, or both. In recent years, TBI has increased its capacity by hiring additional scientists, and while some evidence turnaround times have improved, others continue to experience long delays. At the same time, the demand for testing continues to increase. Currently, the primary constraint on TBI's capacity is space. The Comptroller's 2024 performance audit identified workspace expansion as the next major challenge for TBI, as adding more staff means needing more space to accommodate them. To address this constraint, TBI completed a real estate strategic plan in March of last year. The plan outlines the Bureau's goals to expand forensic capacity by expanding the Jackson Lab, renovating and expanding the Nashville Lab, replacing the existing Knoxville Lab with a larger facility, and establishing a new, smaller lab in Chattanooga. According to TBI, these expansions will help the Bureau reach its turnaround time goal of 8 to 12 weeks across all testing. While funding for the Nashville, Knoxville, and Chattanooga projects has not yet been secured, the expansion of the Jackson Lab is planned to begin sometime this year. The Commission supports this direction and recommends that the state increase crime lab capacity in each Grand Division, in line with TBI's real estate plan, specifically by expanding the existing Jackson and Nashville labs, replacing the Knoxville lab with a larger facility equipped for firearms testing, and establishing a smaller lab in Chattanooga focused on drug-related evidence and toxicology. In addition, the Commission recommends that the expansion at the Nashville lab prioritize the most overburdened disciplines, particularly forensic chemistry and toxicology. To better serve Memphis and Shelby County, the Commission recommends that the TBI and the City of Memphis enter into an agreement to embed a dedicated firearms analyst in the Jackson lab to handle Memphis cases. While the state undertakes the long-term expansion of its facilities, there are other practices to be considered that could help reduce backlogs, expedite accurate forensic results, and improve public safety. Therefore, the Commission also recommends that TBI continue to seek opportunities to improve operational efficiency using external process improvement methods like those recommended by the National Institute of Justice, that the General Assembly amend current DNA testing laws to allow for the implementation of rapid DNA testing technology at law enforcement booking stations, and that the state support resource-sharing partnerships to help train local law enforcement agencies through funding and technical assistance. That concludes a summary of the Commission's recommendations from the draft report, and we welcome your questions, suggestions, and input as we finalize these recommendations. Thank you.
Do we have any questions, Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this report. Just a question about kind of the scope. You've covered firearms testing, drug-related drugs, toxicology, and all that. Was digital forensics a part of this study at all?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, we did review the digital forensics testing that is done at TBI. However, the digital forensics is separate from the forensic laboratory and in a different division, not in the forensic service division under TBI. It's under the technology division.
So you don't have, although you looked at it, you don't have any recommendations or conclusions based on digital forensics?
We didn't have any recommendations for digital forensics, no.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you. Thank you for this study. I had the opportunity to be in Memphis this week and had an opportunity to see where Eliza Fletcher was abducted and see what they're doing as it relates to security in Memphis. And so it's really important that we continue the work that we're doing there to make Memphis safer. And so hopefully the legislature will continue its financial support to make sure that happens. I will say, I guess I was surprised to read one of the recommendations, and I'm partly ashamed not to know this, but could you explain to me about our current DNA testing laws? I was under the idea that we did allow for rapid testing. We just weren't paying for it, that the local law enforcement agencies were doing that. Do we not allow for rapid DNA testing currently?
Thank you. No, the rapid DNA is authorized by the FBI, and our recommendation is more geared towards allowing the testing of offender DNA at booking stations. And the way that the law is written, and when we spoke to the people at TBI, they were saying, well, it's not very clear as into who's, if law enforcement agencies are able to test that DNA on their end at their booking stations. The law currently states that the sample must be taken from the offender and sent to TBI for testing and for them to preserve. So
it's more not that the sample's not being taken for rapid testing. It's more that the law enforcement agency can't do the rapid test. The interpretation of the current statute is that they cannot do the rapid test. It can only be done by an FBI forensic laboratory.
So yes, essentially, that it could only be done by TBI is how the law is interpreted.
Okay. I may have another question.
I'm going to recognize Commissioner, and then I think John Crawford and Senator Yarborough are waiting for the floor too. Commissioner, you're recognized for purposes of making a motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, everything's digital nowadays. And from what I understand from law enforcement, one of the holes that we have that's a growing need in our state is more capacity to do digital forensics in our criminal investigations. So I would like to propose an amendment. This is a draft this is a draft report. I'd like to propose an amendment to I guess the motion that we have to do on this.
Yes.
To include digital forensics as a part of the scope of this report, if that would be appropriate and something that you all would be able to do.
The chair's going to allow that motion. I don't believe we're taking a vote on this today. This was just for our information today. There'll be no vote on this, but he is making an amendment to request that y'all study this. It speaks for itself. So I'm going to allow it unless there's an objection. So there's a second. So is there any questions about them? Do you have any questions about what they want you to look at in your study?
I'll just have a quick statement. While we didn't have any recommendations specifically for TBI's digital forensics, we did, as a part of our recommendations on the regional partnership, we modeled that recommendation after Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. They recently opened a digital forensics facility for local law enforcement in that region to use to come into this facility and do digital forensics. They're training these law enforcement agents on the digital forensics methods and certifying them, and then allowing them to come in and do that, so they wouldn't need to send their things to TBI, since TBI does have a long wait turnaround time in that area. So we are, as a part of that recommendation, encouraging or more partnerships like that if possible throughout the state.
My thought is that with your report, you would make those recommendations on how the demand for this kind of service to deal with criminal activities meets the supply of our ability to do that across the state. If you could address that, that would be very helpful.
And I'm going to treat that now, if I may, for a minute. I'm going to treat the commissioner's request as a motion. We are not voting on this today. So we're technically not amending this. He is making a motion that we request staff to look at this particular issue. And there has been a second to it. Director Lipper, did you have a comment?
My only comment, and we have no issue with it, doing it by this process with a motion in a second. I just want to say that this is part of the review process for a report. So it doesn't even, all it really takes is a request from the members that we add additional material to the report or look at additional issues. But we're happy to entertain a motion that we do that. But your request to do it is all we really need for us, as long as the rest of the members don't disagree.
Is there an objection? There being none, then properly made. Opposed, nay. Carries. Thank you. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see, I believe we had Representative Crawford and Representative William, and now Senator Campbell and Yarborough. So let's see, Representative Crawford. You're next up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I may have a couple of questions if you will bear with me, but my first question would be, I had a bill that I run this year that would have, I think, fixed some of that, and I'm just curious if that was taken into consideration when we were talking about the rapid DNA testing. Now they're waiting till after conviction, and what my bill would do is take that DNA sample at the booking station when they are booked in for the arrest and not have to wait for conviction. Was that taken into consideration in your report?
Thank you. Yes, we followed that bill very closely this session. If that passes, that would require, I think the fiscal note was 9 additional staff at TBI in order to process all of those increasing, I think, because it also expanded this violent felonies collection of DNA to all felonies. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it would increase the amount of samples that TBI was receiving. Still, the way they would have to be they can collect those at the booking station and send those to TBI, but what we're suggesting is allowing the rapid DNA testing to occur at the booking station. So those offender profiles are uploaded immediately into the CODIS database. I think takes 1 to 2 hours with that, having that on site at a booking station. Several other states have incorporated this and find that it does reduce the workload on the forensic laboratories in some way. So
I think in my ability looking at this when I was doing the bill, putting the bill together, there was 33 other states that are doing it at this time, and they had all seen a decrease in the backlog on the DNA samples. So I just wanted to make sure that was being considered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Williams, you're next, and Senators Campbell and Yarborough.
Thank you for that. One of your recommendations was for a new person to recommend just for a firearm analyst. What does a firearm analyst do? Are they doing ballistics testing? Is that generally what they do?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, so it would be ballistics testing.
Okay. In your study of that and the need for it, was it because there was more need there because Memphis had more ballistic testing that needed to be done? Were there any resources that could be used at the other locations as it relates to ballistic testing for firearm analysts, whereas you, instead of sending it to Jackson, you'd send it to Chattanooga or Knoxville or Nashville?
So you're asking, is there any resources at those at the Knoxville lab for testing of
Mhm.
firearms? No. So Knoxville currently does not have a firearms or a ballistic unit, and that is part of the real estate strategic plan that TBI has developed. That when they build a new facility, they will incorporate that. So that will alleviate the pressure on, because now all of East Tennessee has to send its ballistics and firearms testing to Nashville or Jackson.
Okay.
So that would help. So
Okay, thank you. And just following up on what the commissioner was discussing regarding digital forensics, and obviously there's been that some communities do it. I think Chairman Crawford also said that Sullivan County does that. I guess the question would be, it would be good to know as we look at the possibility of putting teeth to the funding as it relates to what the TBI's recommendations are, what it would cost for local governments to be able to do a digital forensics in their community. For instance, if I know Senator Watson and Representative Hicks have worked on trying to find grant pools for local governments and law enforcement as it relates to providing services for them. And we've done that for schools, for hardening communities. It may be that we want to issue or create a grant pool for this type of forensic testing as well. So if we knew what the cost might be to stand one up, it would be good.
Senator Campbell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another subject, I just wanted to ask, kudos, first of all, to TBI for getting rape kit testing times down considerably. Do you have any indication whether or not that trend is actually going to continue? Are they going to even get it down further? And also, will they be continuing to report to the General Assembly on that?
thank you. So the report that they did, their quarterly reports, the last one was in January. So they, as far as I'm not aware of any more reporting specifically on sexual assault kits that TBI will be making to the General Assembly. As far as their improvement, the recent turnaround times for the sexual assault kits for Nashville was 6.2 weeks, Knoxville 11.3 weeks, and Jackson 13.6 weeks. And that was the average for the month of May. So that's averaging at the goal that they've set.
Senator Yarborough.
Thank you for this report, and I think, yeah, you know, Mr. Chairman, like we've been focused on these wait times for what feels like a decade now, and maybe has been, but I'm sort of, I find the space issue like a little puzzling, if not maddening. So we tried to increase the number of employees and did. It would seem that that would be accompanied by a simultaneous expansion of the space in which these employees have to work. And I'm wondering, like, where there's a disconnect, if it was a disconnect in the planning, or if have been requests to do this that we haven't been able to fund yet. Do you have much sense of that?
What I know is that the Knoxville lab cannot expand on its current property, so they're maxed out there, and I think that was a process of trying to procure a new place and find a location and get those plans set up, because in order to expand anywhere, they're going to have to build a brand new facility from the ground up. As far I know, the Nashville and the Jackson lab have done some small renovations, mostly just with not increasing their square footage, but taking other administrative offices and turning them into laboratory space or work desk space for the scientists. I'm not sure exactly any.
Well, I guess this.
You go continue.
Sorry. I guess this might just be an issue that I'd like to flag for the commissioner. I mean, as we, sort of a natural development that when we expand headcount, especially in a facility like this, like you're going to have to deal with the physical space and making sure that we're kind of tracking those things together, and like in our budgeting process. I just feel like we've gotten to a foreseeable spot, and at least that we might had we and whether there should be like a process to make sure that we're flagging those foreseeable bottlenecks earlier. The other question on the report that I wanted to ask is in relation to the sort of comparing Tennessee's backlogs with seeming national averages. I'm looking at page 19 of the report, and on all these metrics, the wait time is longer in Tennessee than it is for at the longer than the median state and longer than even the 75th percentile state on almost all the metrics. But on the firearms pieces, it is just in a like outlier level where it's 400% longer when it comes to firearms testing and like 3,000% longer when it comes to the database entry. And I'm just trying to figure out like what's the that strikes me as a slightly different phenomenon, and I'm just trying to get my head around what's going on there that makes those times dramatically different.
Thank you. For the firearms testing, TBI said that they're working on the oldest cases first and trying to prioritize working those. And so while I think the amount of submissions has decreased, they're still experiencing long turnaround times. And once they expand their facilities, they'll be able to hire more staff and tackle that.
But what about I mean, I guess there's two categories of firearms. There's like the firearms ballistics and the firearms database. And on the firearms database, like the national average is like a 1.4 weeks. And our 2024 average was a huge improvement, but was still 44.9 weeks. Like what's going on there?
I believe that's just from due to the volume of requests in that area. Same.
Chairman Briggs, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep this very brief. I was looking on page 21 and it said crime labs face ongoing staffing challenges. And if we're talking about, I have no idea what the number of people that are employed at the Knoxville office, but if you're talking about relocating that to Chattanooga, you're also talking about to maintain that expertise and that experience. You'd be needing personnel. And, there could very well be some people who, would not want, not want to move. And I didn't know if any consideration was given to just expanding, for instance, some of the firearm testing that we were just talking about down there and having a more limited lab, because it seems like you could face even more, more shortages of your of staffing if you're asking a whole lab for everyone to pick up and move to another city because of kids, a lot of other reasons people may not want to move.
Apologies if there was any confusion. The Knoxville lab will not be relocating to Chattanooga. They will just be building a new lab in Knoxville, and there will be an additional smaller lab focused on drug evidence and toxicology that they'll be adding in Chattanooga. And I believe they'll be adding that to their drug task force office that's already in Chattanooga.
Are there other questions from the members? Chairman Watson.
Thank you. Sort of spattered throughout the report are different cost estimates, but there's no summary of potential costs. I think it might be helpful for members if there's a summation of the various proposals. Particularly, you cite on page 4, you cite the TBI's 2024 real estate strategic plan. I assume in that strategic plan they have put what the cost estimate might be, but if they haven't, it would be helpful because while it's nice to talk about all of these things that we would like to do, it's also more realistic to understand what resources are available and then which ones may or may not have priority based on the availability of resources. So I think within the document, it would be helpful if we had some cost estimates.
All right. Do you have a comment? All right. Any other questions? Well, Representative Williams, bring the curtain down.
Thank you. Well, I'll try to do that. I guess to follow up on that, I know a lot of the backlog is because we've seen a dramatic increase in certain areas across the state as it relates to crime. So much so the FBI is considering putting a task force in one of our communities. I guess if we could have some more elongated data as it relates to the duration of time prior to 22 that allow us to see what the trend actually is, I think it might be beneficial to see if we were able to improve crime across the state, that it may be that we could also overbuild. And so being able to look and see what the trend is, because the hope is and the desire is for Tennessee in these areas where crime is growing, for us to see a reduction in crime. So that it would be this. There is obviously a great demand right now for these services, but the hope would be that through other investments that it wouldn't be necessary. And I think being able to look at the trend over a longer period of time might also be beneficial.
I appreciate where Representative Williams is going, and it triggered a thought in my head, and I don't know the answer to this question. Perhaps the presenter does, or the members of the commission do. What is the funding methodology? For example, if local law enforcement sends materials to be analyzed by the state lab, is there a charge to the locals for doing that? I mean, how is this funded operationally?
TBI does not, there's no cost for the law enforcement officers or agencies to send their evidence to TBI. Their TBI, if you're asking about like where TBI gets its funding from, most of it is from the federal or the state.
So
government.
to the members of the state, I'm assuming there's state and combined with some federal appropriations, the ongoing expenses. And the state bears the cost of all processing of all forensic laboratory, is my understanding. And the question then arises, well, is there other funding methodologies that we might look at that if TBI sends material to be analyzed, then that's a cost borne by TBI. If a local law enforcement sends something to be analyzed by TBI, then there may be a shared cost between the state and the local government. Because if you're going to do any of these things, you're going to have to think of funding methodologies to pay for the ongoing expenses. We can come up with different one-time money to build facilities and all those kind of things. But to maintain these facilities over time requires us to think creatively about how we fund the facilities over time.
Just real quick, just a question. The data, and I have not had a chance to read this, so the question may not be appropriate, but does the data in here is obviously historical data because that's the only way you can do it. Did you look at the new facilities that are coming online, that kind of thing, and was that included in here?
We did include a table in the appendix of all of the TBI's proposed facilities and what they entail.
And how that would impact the historical data?
I don't believe we included that, but we can see if that's in their plan and include that in the report.
I think it would give us, if we have the facilities that are already online, and then see if there's still a gap and what that gap might be. If there's a way to estimate that, would be probably very helpful as well. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, members. And now the next item of business is other business. I'll defer to the director.
Mr. Chairman, the only other business is to notify the members that we will be polling them on potential meeting dates. Traditionally, our summer meeting, as we call it, would be in September, sometimes late August, but usually in September. We try to work around, of course, obviously Labor Day weekend and other events. So we will, if you know of any dates that won't work, I'd ask that you email those to our office manager, April Civilly, but she will be polling you in the next couple of weeks on potential meeting dates.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you for coming today. If there's no objection, we will stand in adjournment.
Non-debatable.